The chair in the Carnarvon room was filled with soft chatter, clinking glasses and distant flashes of cameras. Everyone wore their best smiles. The event was meant to celebrate success. Another film wrapped, another milestone reached. Sandra Bullock wasn't smiling. She sat alone in a quiet corner, far away from the lights and the laughter. Her dress shimmered faintly in the low light, but her eyes were dim. She held a glass of water, untouched. People passed by her, some with polite nods, others too distracted to notice. No one sat beside her. She looked around the room once, then back down at her lap. Her shoulders were straight, as always graceful, composed, but her fingers twisted the edge of her napkin with quiet tension. Then, without a word, Keanu Reeves walked in. He didn't make a grand entrance. He never did. Dressed in simple black, his hair falling just below his shoulders. He looked like someone who didn't care about the cameras or the spotlight. He scanned the room once, politely greeting a few familiar faces, smiled when people approached him but didn't linger long. And then his eyes landed on her. He didn't hesitate. He walked directly across the room. Past producers, past directors, past the guests wearing diamonds and pride. He walked until he reached the quiet corner and the chair no one had touched. All evening, he sat down without asking. "I thought this seat looked lonely," he said gently, his voice soft but certain. Sandra looked up, surprised. For a second, she didn't know what to say. She blinked slowly, then let out a small breath. I guess it was. Keanu didn't try to make her laugh. He didn't tell her everything was going to be okay. He didn't ask why she was sitting alone. He just sat beside her, as if that was the most important place to be. And that silence, that calm, respectful silence said more than words. "Do you remember the first scene we ever shot together?" he asked after a while, turning to her, his expression warm. Sandra's lips curled into the smallest smile. "The bus scene," she said. "I was terrified. You hit it well. You were the only reason I didn't fall apart." Keanu tilted his head. "You never looked like someone who could fall apart." "That's the problem," she whispered. "No one thinks I can." For a moment, the music from the hall faded into a soft hum. Sandra's voice was quiet, but the weight in it was heavy. And Keanu didn't speak right away. He took a slow breath and placed his glass on the table. "I think the strongest people," said, "are the ones who know how to sit alone and still hold themselves together." Those words didn't come from a script. They came from his own life, from years of quiet pain, loss, and silent healing. Sandra looked at him, eyes glossy. She tried to hold back a tear, but one escaped anyway. She wiped it quickly, turning away just enough so no one else could see. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For seeing me. Tonight." Keanu nodded, his voice almost a whisper now. "Always." Just then, someone called his name from across the room. A director waving, wanting a picture. Keanu gave a short nod, but didn't stand. "Not yet." He looked at Sandra one more time. "Do you want to leave?" he asked softly. She hesitated, then gave the smallest nod. And with that, he stood up, offered his hand, and without making a scene, walked her quietly out of the room, away from the noise, the lights, and the empty applause. That night, no one wrote headlines about what happened. No camera caught it. But for Sandra, it was the moment she remembered, not because of the glamour, but because someone saw her. Not the actress, not the star, just her. And that changed everything. The diner with no camera street outside was quiet. City lights blinked in the distance, and a soft breeze moved through the trees. Sandra and Keanu walked slowly, side by side, without saying much. They didn't need to, after the crowd. The cameras and the noise, silence felt like peace. Keanu had parked his motorcycle just a block away. He paused beside it, then looked at her. "Do you want to ride?" he asked with a small smile. She raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" "Always." For the first time that evening, Sandra let out a real laugh, soft and sudden. "You're lucky I trust you. You're lucky I have an extra helmet." He handed it to her like it was something precious, and she accepted it, like she hadn't smiled in days. They rode through the city under stars and streetlights. No one followed. No one cared. There were no flashing cameras, no people whispering. Their names. Just the hum of the engine and two people who had known each other for years. Quietly remembering what it meant to just be human, Keanu stopped near a small diner. It's a kind of place with old signs and warm light leaking through foggy windows. He held the door open for her and she walked inside, greeted by the smell of pancakes and coffee. "This place?" she asked, looking around. "No one comes here to be seen," he said. "They just come to be full." They sat in a booth by the window. The waitress didn't recognize them, or maybe she did and just didn't care. Either way, she brought them menus with a smile that felt more real than anything they'd seen all evening. Keanu ordered pancakes. Sandra got tea and toast. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic. But when the food arrived, it felt like home. "You?" "No," she said, holding the warm cup between her hands. "It's strange. I've been to the biggest events. I've worn gowns that cost more than a car. And yet, this moment right here feels more valuable." Keanu looked at her, then nodded. "Because no one is asking you to perform." She took a slow sip of her tea. "Do you ever get tired of it all?" He didn't answer right away. He looked out the window, watching a couple walk past, laughing about something no one else would. "Understand. Sometimes," he said. "But then I remember people like you. Me." She frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "People who are still gentle in a world that teaches us to be hard. People who care even when it hurts." Sandra looked down at her plate, then back at him. "Keanu... Do you ever feel like you're carrying more than you show?" He held her gaze for a long time. "Yes," he said. "Every day." It was the first time he admitted it to anyone, at least out loud. "You hide it well," she whispered. "So do you." They didn't cry. They didn't hug. They just sat in that booth, two people known by millions, but understood by few. Finally sharing a moment of honesty that had nothing to do with fame. A moment that reminded both of them why they had stayed friends for so many years. After a while, Sandra broke the silence. "You always show up when I need someone, don't you?" Keanu smiled faintly. "You always notice when I do." With that, they finished their meal. No autographs, no flashing lights. It's just a warm goodbye to the waitress and a shared glance that said more than words ever could. As they stepped outside, the night air felt lighter, freer. Where to next? She asked. Keanu looked up at the sky. "Somewhere we can just breathe." She nodded. "Lead the way." And so they rode again. Not as stars, not as actors, but as two souls, trying to remember what it meant to simply feel safe in someone else's presence. A quiet place to fall apart. They drove for miles without speaking. The city lights faded behind them, and soon they were riding along an empty stretch of road, the world around them silent and dark. Sandra held tightly to Keanu, her face pressed lightly against his back, not out of fear, but because in that moment she didn't want to be anywhere else. When they finally stopped, it wasn't at a mansion, a studio, or some hidden celebrity retreat. Keanu parked outside a simple cabin. Near the edge of a quiet lake, there were no neighbors, no cameras, no security guards. Just trees, still water, and stars. "This is yours?" Sandra asked softly. Keanu nodded. "My little escape. I come here when the noise gets too loud." She smiled. You never told me about this place." He glanced at her, his tone gentle. "Some places are sacred. But tonight, you needed peace more than I needed solitude." She didn't answer. Instead, she followed him inside. The cabin smelled like pine and wood smoke. There was a fireplace, a bookshelf full of old novels, a guitar leaning in the corner, and a window with a view of the lake. Keanu handed her a warm blanket, then lit the fireplace. The flames slowly came to life, painting the room with soft orange light. They sat on the floor near the fire. For a while, they said nothing. The quiet wasn't awkward. It was healing. After some time, Sandra finally spoke. "I lost someone recently," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone who meant everything to me. I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want to be seen as weak." Keanu turned toward her. He didn't say, "I'm sorry." He didn't say, "Be strong." Dead. He simply nodded. "Don't need to explain. You just need to feel." Her eyes welled up and she looked away quickly. I've spent my whole life pretending to be okay. Acting strong, smiling through things that shattered me. Keanu leaned closer, his tone low. You don't have to do that here. That broke something inside her. Sandra let the tears fall, and he let her. He didn't rush her. He didn't fix her. He just sat beside her, hand resting gently on her shoulder as if saying, I'm here. Even in your broke end. After a few minutes, she spoke again. You've lost people too, I remember. Your sister, your girlfriend. Keanu looked into the fire. I lost pieces of myself with them. How did you survive it? He was quiet for a long time. I didn't, he said finally. Not all of me, but the part that remained. Learned how to keep going. Someone else might need me to sit beside them one day. Sandra looked at him, eyes soft with something more than sadness. You're that person for so many people, Keanu. Not because you're famous, but because you're real. He gave a faint smile. And you are stronger than you know. Not because you hide your pain, because you carry it so quietly. Fire crackled gently. Outside, the lake reflected the stars like a mirror. And inside, two people who had seen the world and survived it, sat in quiet understanding. Do you want to stay the night? Keanu asked. I don't want to be alone, she said honestly. Then you're not. He set up the guest. Room for her, bring in extra pillows, blankets, and even a little nightlight he kept in a drawer. Before she went to bed, she turned to him one last time. Thank you for letting me fall apart. You didn't fall apart, he said. You allowed yourself to feel. That's not weakness, it's courage. As she stepped into the room, something shifted inside her, a slow, deep warmth that came not from the fire, but from being seen, and for the first time in a long while. She slept peacefully, because sometimes healing begins with one person saying, I'm not leaving. Things we never say on Camroth. Sun rose slowly over the lake, turning the water gold. Birds sang somewhere in the trees. The air smelled of dew and pine. Sandra stood by the window of the small guest room, wrapped in the blanket Keanu had given her. Her face was calm, softer than it had been in weeks. She hadn't planned to stay the night. She hadn't planned to cry. And she definitely hadn't planned to feel safe again. But somehow, Keanu had known. He always seemed to know. In the kitchen, he was already making coffee. Barefoot, hair still messy, dressed in a plain shirt, he looked nothing like the Hollywood star everyone knew. Looked like someone who belonged to the quiet. Morning, he said gently, handing her a mug. Without asking how she liked it, he remembered she took it with a small smile. You're up early. Some habits never leave, he said. I used to wake up early to ride with my dad before everything changed. She nodded. You don't talk about your past much? Do, he said, looking out the window. Just not on camera. They sat on the porch steps, drinking coffee in silence. The wind danced through the trees. Neither of them rushed the moment. I used to think silence meant something was wrong, Sandra said. But with you, it feels like rest. We talk too much in this world, Keanu replied. We listened a little, looked down. At her hands, I think I forgot how to be heard. I think most people forget. She turned to him. What about you? You always seem calm, peaceful. Don't you ever want to scream? He chuckled softly. I do. I've learned how to turn the scream into silence. Sometimes silence is louder. She studied him, really. Studied him. The lines on his face, the gentle sadness in his eyes, the patience in his voice. How did you become this version of you? She asked. He didn't smile. He didn't shrug. By breaking, he said, again and again, till what was left was only what mattered. The words hung in the air. And what matters now? She asked. He looked at her straight into her. This. Honesty. Presence. Being there for someone when they don't even ask. Sandra felt her throat tighten. Her eyes stung again, but this time she didn't turn away. Why did you come to me last night? She whispered. Because I saw you, he answered. And I knew you were pretending to be okay. You always see people like that? Not always, he said, but I try. They sat quietly for a while longer. No pressure. No performance. Just two souls learning to breathe beside each other. After breakfast, they took a walk around the lake. The ground was soft beneath their shoes, the sunlight filtering through the trees. They didn't talk much. Every so often, one of them would say something small, a memory, a regret, a thought they'd never said aloud. "I miss who I used to be," Sandra said quietly. "Before fame," he asked. "Before fear." Ugh. He paused beside a tree, resting, his hand against the bark. "You're still her, just hidden under the armor. And if I take the armor off, you might bruise," he said, "but you'll feel again. That's the only way to heal." She looked at him then, really looked, and realized how much of his own life he was hiding between those words. Not preaching, just sharing. "Keanu." She started, but her voice broke. He turned gently toward her. "I don't want to go back," she said. "Not yet." "Then don't," he replied. "Stay until the silence no longer hurts." And just like that, she knew he wasn't offering her a place to hide. He was offering her a space to be whole. Where the pain lives, quiet lithe cabin became a quiet world of its own. No scripts, no red carpets, no deadlines. The only schedule was the rise and fall of the sun. And the only expectation was to simply exist. Sandra found herself doing things she hadn't done in years, sitting on the porch in the early morning, barefoot in the grass, watching birds chase one another across the sky. She didn't check her phone. She didn't scroll through headlines. She just breathed. And Keanu was there, not hovering, not instructing, just present. The kind of presence that didn't need to speak to be felt. One evening, as the sky turned orange, he pulled out his old guitar and started playing near the fireplace. Soft, slow notes.
Number lyrics.
Just sound that filled the room with something warm and real. Sandra sat across from him on the floor, her legs pulled to her chest. "You used to play for your sister, didn't you?" she asked gently. He nodded, his fingers still moving. Said music made the pain softer. "Do you still feel it?" she asked. Keanu didn't answer right away. "Grief doesn't leave," he said quietly. "It just changes shape." He looked up at her eyes, calm but deep with old hurt. "Some days, it sits beside me like a shadow. Other days, it's a storm inside my chest. But here's the truth. You learn to walk with it, not against it." Sandra closed her eyes and listened. Not just to the music, but to the honesty in his voice. "I've been so tired," she whispered. "Not the kind of tired that sleep can fix. It's the kind where your soul forgets how to rise." "Then let it rest," he said gently. "Let it lay down for a while. But what if people notice? Then they'll finally see you." She swallowed hard. "What if they don't like what they see? Then they never truly saw you in the first place." The fire crackled softly. Outside, the wind moved through the trees like a lullaby. She looked around the room, simple, safe, filled with little things that meant something. Books with folded pages. A photo of Keanu and his sister as children. A half-finished sketch. Nothing polished, nothing staged. It felt like truth. And for the first time in a long time, she wanted to tell her truth too. "My mother was sick last year," she said suddenly. "I didn't tell the press. I didn't tell the crew. Kept working through it, kept showing up, smiling, giving interviews." She paused, but inside I was falling apart. Keanu's hand stopped on the strings. He didn't interrupt. He just looked at her. "I was scared," she admitted. "I was scared that if I let myself fall, no one would catch me. And if I disappeared, the world would just keep moving without me." He nodded slowly. "The world always moves. Real people wait for you to return." She exhaled shakily, emotion trembling in her chest. "She passed in her sleep," she whispered. "And I was on set when it happened." Keanu moved to sit beside her. He didn't say sorry. He didn't reach for her hand. He simply sat close enough so she could feel that she wasn't alone. After a long silence, she spoke again. "I've been carrying that moment like a brick in my chest, pretending it wasn't heavy, pretending I could handle it." "You don't have to pretend anymore," he said. She turned to him. "Why are you always like this?" "Like what?" "Soft, kind, patient." Keanu thought for a second, then answered, because the world taught me how it feels to be alone in a storm. And I promised myself if I ever saw someone else out there, I'd walk into the rain with them. Tears welled up in her eyes again, but this time she didn't hide them. Thank you for walking into mine. Keanu smiled gently. You don't have to say thank you. Just stay as long as you need. And as the fire burned low and the music faded, Sandra leaned her head on his shoulder, not for support, not for comfort, but because for the first time in a long while she felt like she belonged. The return that felt deferentes passed slowly at the cabin, not in boredom, but in peace. Every hour was a gift. There were no makeup artists, no interviews, no need to explain how you felt. Oh. Sandra started smiling without effort, laughing. Without guilt, her body stopped bracing for pain. Her heart started remembering what still mattered. Keanu didn't try to fix her. He didn't tell her when to leave. He just made space, and in that space, healing happened. They spent afternoons by the lake, skipping stones, and watching the sun drift across the sky. They shared old stories, moments they had hidden deep inside for years, moments no one had ever heard, not even the people closest to them. Sandra learned that Keanu still wrote letters to people he'd lost. Not to send just to say things he hadn't said in time. Keanu learned that Sandra hadn't cried during her mother's funeral because there had been cameras outside the gates. They were waiting, she said softly, waiting to catch me break. They never did, he replied. But I did break, she whispered. Yes, he said. And still, you're here. On their last morning at the cabin, Sandra stood by the water watching her reflection ripple. Her eyes were clear now. Tired, yes, but not in the same way. Something in her posture had changed. Softer, lighter. Keanu stepped beside her. You ready to go back? He asked gently. She took a deep breath. Not completely, but enough. Smiled. That's all we ever need. They packed up quietly. No rush, no sadness. Just the quiet truth that this place had served its purpose. A small shelter from the world's weight as they loaded the bike. Sandra turned to him. I want to tell people the truth, she said. Not the magazine version, the real version. Keanu nodded. Tell it when you're ready. And tell it how you lived it. She smiled. And if they don't understand, then you told it for the right reason for you. They rode back the way they came, but everything looked different now. The roads weren't so harsh. The noise didn't sting as much, because sometimes peace isn't in the place, it's in what you carry back from it. When they reached the city, they stood at a quiet street corner. Not quite goodbye, not quite continuation. Sandra took a step closer to him. Why did you help me, Keanu? She asked. Really? His answer was simple. Because when I saw you sitting alone, I saw myself. And I knew what it meant to need someone who simply wouldn't walk away. She looked at him, eyes soft, full of gratitude. I'll never forget it, she said. You're not supposed to, he replied. Some moments change us, and they're meant to. They hugged, not for the cameras, not for the headlines, just because they could. And when they walked away in different directions, there was no emptiness, only quiet strength. A kind of healing that doesn't need to be spoken about, because it lives in the way you carry yourself from that day forward. And Sandra, she never sat alone like that again. Not because she never felt sad, but because now she knew someone saw her once fully and reminded her that she mattered. And that kind of memory doesn't fade. It becomes part of who you are.